Hi, everyone. Welcome to another amazing topic of conversation. And today I'm very happy to introduce Elliot. And all the titles that he has and the expertise, he's the perfect person to explain what we're going through. But before we go into that, Elliot, please, like self introduction, but wait a second.
Oh,
Because there's also some people that I want to thank before we go to you.
okay.
So thank you to our sponsors, the Health Channel and the program Ready Check Go by Thermo Fisher and the bracelet I remember bracelet that actually talks about eliminating genocide. So thank you so much for your support and welcome, Elliot.
Thank you, Gladys. It's a pleasure to be on. Wow, what do I tell you about myself? I was born in Los Angeles. That's true, but we're not going to go back that far. So I got a PhD about 25 years ago in housing economics. And that's been my focus for much of the time since. And about 10 years ago, I went on my own as an economist and owned my own firm called Graphs and Laughs. And I travel around the country giving speeches on, of all things, economics. It's not so much that I'm a good economist and so entertaining, it's that all the other ones are much worse. I think that's what makes me relatively terrific. And I was a bad student in high school, so I understand that people don't understand economics that quickly, and it doesn't make sense always. So you have to use examples and analogies and so on to make it understandable, believable, and logical and obvious. And I love doing it. And I'm just honored to be on your show. And thank you so much for the opportunity.
No, I'm so thrilled that you have accepted with your expertise. And believe me, you're amazing when you do speeches because you actually get the people engaged. So anybody that's looking out there, if you want to have Elliot to speak on your event, he's available. So let me start with our first question. What is skimflation?
That's a great term. It's essentially giving you what you think you were getting before, but not exactly. So you can think of it as a cereal box that used to contain, I don't know, 16 ounces of cereal, now contains 15 ounces of cereal.
And
Chocolate bars that have gotten smaller. Or, for example, you used to go to a McDonald's and wait in line 2 minutes to get a burger. Now you wait 4 minutes to get a burger. The burger is more expensive. Or think of it this way. You go to a hotel.
Wait. What do you mean? Yeah, I know the burger is more expensive, but what does it have to do with waiting 2 minutes versus 4 minutes?
Well, the cost to you in terms of time and money has gone up. You're getting the same hamburger, but it's now taking more effort, time and money effort.
Not the same hamburger.
Same hamburger.
No, because the other day I actually went to a McDonald's, which I hadn't been in a million years, and the hamburger was mini.
Okay, so in that case, it's more per pound and takes longer.
Okay.
Another example of skimflation. Another one is you go to a hotel. The price is still the same, $200 a night or whatever it is, for example. But they don't
somewhere else.
But they don't clean your room.
Oh yeah.
The hotel costs more money. You're paying the same price, but you're not getting the same service. The service includes cleaning your room, making it pretty, putting new towels and so on. You're not getting it. And the reason this is going on is prices are going up. Prices for inputs, so soap, towels, washing detergent, hamburger, cereal, whatever it is, and labor, the person to clean the room, to make the cereal and so on. So firms are saying to themselves, how can I get around this? Smaller packaging, less services. You go to a restaurant, you wait longer to get your food. One, two, the menu has shrunk. You used to like a certain salad, but they don't sell that salad anymore. So you have to buy a less satisfying salad. You have to buy this salad, not that. You have to buy the Greek salad, not the, I don't know what, the lettuce salad or something, whatever it is. So you're being deprived of choice. You're paying more money per pound. You're getting less services. This is all, but they aren't gigantic. They aren't drastically reducing service. They aren't drastically reducing the size of the package, hoping that you don't notice, quite frankly.
Well, yes and no. The hamburger was literally half the size of what I remember in McDonald's. So no, that was shocking.
That's very funny. That's very funny.
So that's the way that they're
Maybe,
trying to
maybe it's been so
overcome.
long you went to McDonald's, you were like 12 years old last time. And in your memory, the hamburger got bigger and bigger because you were little.
And then, okay, fair enough. Even though I love their fries, but this is not a McDonald's commercial. So wait, we are hearing everywhere, yes, prices have been ridiculously going up. There is, and we did a conversation about the whole logistics
Oh,
and
yeah.
the whole trade industry that has been impacted. But for the inflation that we're living through, isn't this like the perfect storm?
It is the perfect storm. There's this, it's a combination of bad luck and policies that collectively created it. So if you go back 2 years before COVID starts, inflation's low, there are no real problems on the horizon. Things are good, labor market's working okay, GDP's decent, not great, but fine. Then we have COVID.
Correct.
COVID is a whole bunch of things. First, at the government level, monetary policy becomes wildly expansionary. So interest rates go from, at the time, the Fed funds rate was 2%, which was very low, to zero, which is lower. So interest rates low, which is expansionary. People want to borrow, buy cars, buy houses. And that's in fact what we did. That's why housing prices and car prices have gone way up. On top of that, Congress was very stimulative on fiscal policy by sending out stimmy checks, unemployment checks, money to state and local governments, PPP loans that are forgivable. So you have massive monetary stimulus and you have massive fiscal stimulus. Under normal conditions, this would create inflation. There's no doubt this would create inflation, for sure. But the extra magical ingredient, the secret sauce is, oh, wow, now we also have supply chains that break down. So you've got massive demand, both because interest rates are low and everybody has cash, and an inability to supply the goods and services that we want. So we all want to go and buy Pelotons. I'm making up the example. We all want to go buy a pergola. We all want to go buy an outdoor grill so we can eat outside and not have to have a mask on. We have the money. We're locked in our house. We have lots of time.
And there's no
grills to buy because we're locked in our homes. We're the guys who make the grills, but we're all locked at home. The Chinese are locked at home. Their story is even worse. They have zero tolerance policy for COVID, which is an incredibly stupid policy, and they don't trust their own injections. But that's a whole separate conversation. But if your supply chain depends on China, you're largely screwed because you can't get a single part that's made in China, and that city's closed down with 20 million people because 2 people have COVID. So the demand becomes insatiable, and supply is simply not there. So the massive monetary and fiscal policy alone are bad enough, but then the supply chain breaks down, and the supply chain, there's no expectation that the supply chain will get better very quickly. So we're going to have to learn to live with this inability to produce what we want. The only real good news here is that fiscal policy stopped being expansionary. It's now contractionary, and monetary policy is starting to tighten. It's not going to be tight, but it's tightening. And supply chains will, over the next 12, 15 months, begin to get better. So, and savings is being depleted, and real incomes are flat to declining because inflation's so high. So this inflation should begin to work its way down, and the Fed's going to raise rates, but we'll talk about that later.
correct. So it will come down eventually once everything gets normalized.
It should. There's a
should.
catch.
Yeah, correct. It should, because for example, now one of the biggest issues is the truck drivers.
Good example.
Drivers.
We're 80,000 truck drivers short in the country.
Correct. And there's also no containers.
Right. And because the containers can't be offloaded off the ship, they can't put new ones on. The trucks can't go in to get the containers. There aren't enough drivers. There aren't enough tractors. There aren't enough trailers. The problem, the supply chain problems are so serious. So what happens now? Inflation is now running it.
Only here, right? This is worldwide. This is not only here.
Correct. It's worldwide, but
Worldwide
interestingly
problem.
enough, the problems worldwide are exacerbated by the US because our monetary and fiscal policy were so expansionary, more than any other country, and we're really big and we're wealthy. So Canada did things similar. Pardon me?
And we spend.
And we spend. Like Canada did similar things the UK did also, but we were far and away the poster child for doing more of it. So yes, it's global. Inflation is bad in Europe, in many countries, Latin America, and so on. Not in China, not in Japan so much, because different fiscal and monetary policies. But yeah, the two catches that I think are important here is one, if we have a mindset of inflation. So inflation's been around now for 6-8 months, whatever it is, maybe a year. Now it's time to get a pay raise. So I go to my boss. My boss is Gladys. I say, Gladys, I'm doing a great job. I'm your chief economist. I want a pay raise. You say, Elliot, last year I gave you 3% pay raise. This year I'll give you 4%. And I go, come on, inflation's 7%.
It's 7%, correct.
I need 10%. Well, then you give me 10%, but now you have to charge more for the services that you provide clients. And then I want more money because inflation and da 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 da. That's one. The second fear I have is rents. Rents are going up very rapidly because we're not building enough homes. Demand for housing is insatiable. And rents are about 25-30% of the inflation index, the CPI. So if rent inflation just really takes off or stays high, that alone could push the Fed to have to raise rates more just to dampen the inflation coming from rents, even if the supply chain problems slowly ameliorate.
So I heard today a statistic that talking about rents and the housing problem. Florida is number 2 in the country for people moving in. And there are 900 people moving to Florida every day. So people are now raising their rents ridiculously.
Great to be a landlord.
Correct, but there is a line like, okay, I put in a contract and they say, no, I have 3 or 4 people. So you go, okay, I'll give you a little more. But that's ridiculous.
Right, they auction off the apartment now to the highest bidder.
It's for the highest bidder. But I understand that people are coming into Miami. I know that a lot of the tech companies, Miami mayor did an amazing job to sell Florida, but especially Miami. But what happens with those workers, those employees that are needed in an everyday, the ones that help in the restaurants, the ones that do the hotel cleaning, those people that depend on their job that cannot afford to have a 30% rent raise.
In the long run, I hate to say this, but they're out of luck. What will happen over time, as what happened in Washington, D.C., and is now happening in Denver, is that as house prices keep going up and rents keep going up, poor people move away. They have to move somewhere where it's cheaper. They move to Pensacola, they move to Jacksonville. I don't know where they move exactly, but they have to move away at some point. Luckily, there's still a lot of affordable housing stock in Miami or in Dade and Broward County and so on, but we don't build enough homes. There's no place to build here. You only can knock down to build up. There's physically no open parcels left in Southern Florida. So rents will go up, people keep moving here, taxes are low, and people realize that with a virus like COVID that can come back at any time, there's a premium on living in a place where you can be outside. There's a premium where housing is relatively cheaper. And even though housing is going up here in Southern Florida, it's generally speaking much cheaper than in Boston, Washington, and New York. So people keep coming down and taxes are very low here. So Texas is the only state growing faster than Florida.
Yes.
As you said, we're number 2.
We're number 2. Texas is growing like I think it was 1,000 people moving there.
It's a little more than we are, a little more, yeah.
Daily, that's like insane.
It's insane, it really is. And traffic, of course, here is worse as a result too. Now, this doesn't go on forever. At some point, people go, oh my gosh, traffic's really bad, house prices are high, let's move somewhere else. And people are moving to other places in Florida. They're moving to Jacksonville is very popular. Sarasota is very popular. Tampa, St. Pete. Those are very popular places
They're
because
expanding and moving out to smaller cities.
they're more affordable than Miami.
Correct. Anything was more affordable now. So, Elliot, Economics 101, what the feds are going to increase the interest rates.
Right?
How? Let me explain. Explain to me and to everyone, what are they trying to do and what will be the end result?
Okay, well, the end result's unknown. If I knew that, I wouldn't have to work for a living. But let me give you the understanding. Congress gave the Fed two responsibilities. They have to have stable prices, full employment, and they are in conflict, of course, right? You can get easily full employment with high inflation. So you have to sort of manage both within limits. But right now, unemployment is 3.9%. It's essentially back where it was pre-COVID at 3.5.
But there's also 4.9 available jobs.
Right. There are many more available jobs than there are unemployed people. Absolutely.
Correct.
Absolutely. So by these definitions, looking at the unemployment rate, looking at the number of people who are unemployed versus number of jobs that are open, we are at full employment. Our labor markets cannot produce more workers, essentially. More workers, they're not coming into the market fast enough to take the jobs. And that's why wages are going up, and that's pushing inflation. So you've got very low unemployment, too low unemployment. So Congress's mandate to the Fed was to have full employment. We have full employment. Congratulations. The other mandate is stable prices. Look, inflation of 5 or 6%, that's not stable. So the Fed's caught. They have to raise rates now. They have no choice because justification, Congress and the markets are going to be angry at the Fed because they're not controlling inflation. Now, in the past, they could say, look, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, look, inflation's below 2%, unemployment's still falling, we can let it rip. But now they don't have that luxury. If they let it rip anymore, inflation is going to get worse, right? And they're not allowed to have inflation too much stable. 2-3% is fine, but 5, 6, 7, not fine. So they have to raise rates. The hope in raising rates, and this is risky, it's risky, because almost every time we have had a recession in the past, almost every time, it's because the Fed raises rates too much when they start an interest rate rising cycle like they're doing now. And the reason they raise rates too much is because they see the inflation, they start to crank up rates and they go, oh, we raised them too much. And the economy starts to soften. And then they have to cut rates. So there's always fear when you start an interest rate rising cycle like we are now, it ends badly. It goes off the rails, it ends in tears. Hopefully it doesn't happen. Hopefully they don't have to raise rates too much too fast. Maybe they raise rates 3 or 4 times this year, each a quarter point. So we raise short-term interest rates, short-term interest by 1%, maybe by 1%, hopefully less, but maybe as much as 1% this year, maybe 3/4 next year. I think if they raise much more than that in that 2-year time frame, it could be bad. It depends how fast inflation falls. If inflation by the end of the year falls by, say, 2 percentage points, whoa, the Fed can say, look, things are getting better all by themselves. We don't have to slow the economy down so much.
But wait, okay, so you're talking about why they're raising rates, but also the inflation was caused by all the disruption in the
supply chains.
In the supply chain. So how does that affect it?
Well, the supply chain should get better to some extent by themselves. I mean, businesses, the industry, manufacturers, and so on have incentives to try and solve that problem, right? They're not going to sit around and twiddle their thumbs and go, oh, nothing I can do about this. They're going to try alternative sources and so on.
The small businesses are the ones that are being hurt more.
Sure, the big business, but the big business is paying more money too. Walmart is renting their own ships and their own planes to move things.
That's right.
But these solutions eventually pan out, and it should. If I had to bet, I'm not sure enough to bet my thumb, but I'm sure enough to bet my pinky that by the end of this quarter, So by the end of March,
April, May, March.
inflation will have peaked. The question is on the Fed's mind is how fast does it go down? If it goes down too slowly, they have to keep raising rates, and that could be risky. If it falls at a pleasant pace, they can raise rates much more slowly, not have to raise them so quick or so high, and we avoid the threat or fear of a recession. But it's anybody's guess. Right now, Wall Street thinks the Fed's going to raise too much and then going to lower rates in 24. Hopefully the Fed doesn't do that and they raise rates more slowly, inflation comes down, a few million more people go back to work once COVID's gone and daycares are open and they run out of savings, and that pushes up the unemployment rate a bit, and that would be magic. Inflation falls all by itself, and with the help from the Fed, labor markets improve, more people enter. Woo, we've dodged a bullet. But imagine if it doesn't happen, then we're in big trouble.
Then we go into a recession.
Maybe. Yep. So the recession won't come until 23, mid to late 23 is my guess, but it's a plausible scenario if the Fed raises too much. I mean, the market says now, the Wall Street's saying, oh, they should raise, people are saying 7 times this year. I mean, that's like literally.
But that doesn't make sense.
Putting a gun to our heads, right?
Because it also correlates with the supply chain. So if that makes sense and that goes down, then they do not have to raise as much.
Right. You get an A+ in econ class.
Yeah, right. But we're not even solving the labor problem. Because like you said, okay, I want a raise. And everybody wants a raise because of everything that's going up. So that's going to create another snowball effect. It can.
Data came out today saying wage inflation is coming down a little bit. So that was arguably good news. There's so much we don't know here of how things will transpire. If enough workers return to the labor force who left, about 3 million workers left the labor force, just flat out retired, whatever.
Went to do something else. Yeah, because it's contrary to what people think.
Right. So if they come back,
the government is paying them to sit and do nothing. That's not right. Because
but
they changed.
Those policies are ending. So if workers come back, wage inflation comes down. The other thing is the level of unionization in the US is much lower than it was 30, 40 years ago, when the really bad inflation of the 70s and early 80s took place. Unionization rates are now 10%. They were 20, 22, 23% before. So the impact of inflation and its immediate impact on wages has been to some extent broken because of the lack of unionization. So it's not so instantaneous. It can still happen, but it takes longer and it's slower as a result. So the world's a different place, and firms have invested a lot in technology to ameliorate COVID. Like, for example, maybe they're buying a robotic arm that makes hamburgers. It's like they make the hamburger meat and they drop the hamburger in the fryer. And now they don't have a worker because workers are expensive.
Eliminate someone, correct.
Right. So there are countervailing forces in economics that businesses can undertake. We're not all just innocent bystanders here in collateral damage. We have the power of free agency. We are able to influence the outcome by doing things in our restaurant, our store, our business, whatever it is. So these should help reduce inflation. But so far, they haven't, or they haven't much. So
we haven't been through COVID. So you cannot go back in history and say, okay, this is what happened.
Right. We don't know. We really don't know. So I'm a little bit more concerned than I was before about a recession down the road. I wouldn't say I'm preoccupied with it by any stretch of the imagination. I don't want here to alarm your listeners here, right? But it should be in the back of your mind as a possibility down the road. I think that's fair.
Okay.
But again, remember,
inspiring, not a very inspiring way, because going out of COVID, a lot of people are still struggling.
They are. And people,
Way.
500,000 more Americans than before COVID on a daily basis don't go to work. They're employed, and they're sick because of COVID, probably.
Yeah.
So you lose 1 million workers here, 2 million workers there, 500,000 here. It adds up to a lot. If we can get some of these workers back, that will be a great thing, but who knows?
Yeah, every little bit contributes to the perfect storm.
And then Putin may decide to invade Ukraine. Well, once Putin decides to invade Ukraine, then Xi Jinping says, hey, I'll take Taiwan.
Correct. And we'll all go into Third World War.
Right. I mean, this could be, you can't plan. No one, look, we don't understand COVID all that well. You talk to virologists and epidemiologists, and they all say, pardon me?
We're still understanding. Now there's a new variant.
Right.
The old variant.
Right. They know very little about what's going on. So it's hard to know what's coming down the pike. It really is. But things are better. The pandemic is going from the pandemic to the endemic phase. This should be a good thing. More people are vaccinated and boosted. More people have been exposed to COVID. Q2 and next year, this year, 22, should be a good year economically. We should get close to 4% GDP growth. This should be a good year. The question is, it's the inflation that's the big concern here and labor market. That's superimposed, but growth should be good.
Okay. So with that, Elliot, thank you so much.
My pleasure. It's been terrific. I look forward to next time already. Thank you for the invitation.
Because this definitely has to be continued on what happens with the rates and interest and the whole thing that we're going through.
Well, we'll follow up at one of these times, but thank you so much for having me on your show.
Thank you. And everybody, stay tuned for next week. And above all, stay safe. Have a good day.